I think we'll get started.
Go ahead.
So, welcome to Divorce Periscope. We do these broadcasts the first and third Wednesday of every month. So, tonight we're talking about divorce and children. So, the process and how it impacts kids, and sort of the best way to help kids that are going through it. And we're lucky to have a therapist with us tonight, Dana Goode. And I'm Matt Pilisher, and I'm the host, and I am an attorney mediator at Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. So we do mediation, sort of a holistic approach to divorce, helping couples go through it from start to finish with a team of professionals. And Dana is sometimes one of those professionals. She does parenting mediations with clients who have kids and are going through the divorce process. So, let me introduce you, Dana. Dana is a clinical psychologist in practice in Center City, Philadelphia. She received her doctoral degree from the Institute for Graduate Clinical Psychology at Widener University. She's licensed and has been in private practice for over 20 years. Over the years, she's developed an expertise in working with divorcing families, including adults considering divorce, going through the separation and divorce process, children coping with their parents' divorce, co-parenting, and mediation. She's been involved in divorce mediation with the Alpha Center since 2004. Dana also helps families in the process of reunification, and she's worked in numerous inpatient and outpatient settings. So thank you, Dana, for being here. Yeah, it's great to have you. So we're going to go through a lot of topics tonight, but let me start by asking you, what are some common reactions that kids have to divorce when their parents are divorcing?
Well, it's really their lives become somewhat turned upside down for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we know, which is really positive, is that kids can come through divorce, their parents' divorce, just fine. And they need some help and they need some support, but they can go ahead and have really good, healthy lives. So that's very positive. One of the things, as I was thinking about and planning a little about what to talk about this evening, one of the things that I think is so important is the issue of anxiety and separation anxiety and the fear of abandonment. And this is something that is important because when parents divorce, the impact, well, divorce can really threaten the security of the attachment bond. It doesn't have to. It's not that, that's a given in any way, but it's something that can threaten that security. And one of the things that we know is that babies, children, infants are biologically predisposed to form attachments. And this starts at the very beginning, from the time they're born, really, so that very early on, they first can show that they prefer the voice of a human being over some other noise. And then they show that they're able to recognize and respond differently to the voice of their mother or father or a primary caretaker, and that they prefer that over other voices. And then eventually they're able to meet the primary caretaker's eyes and really hold that gaze. And the social smile develops, and so babies are attaching, but also parents are too. So it's mutual. It goes both ways. And those are in the very early days. And then with the passage of a little time, the social smile becomes more selective, so that babies will more readily smile and respond to the people who are considered the inner circle. The parents, a sibling, grandparent, people who are around the baby all the time. And so that those people are able to elicit from this baby more smiles. They're able to comfort the child if he or she is, frightened or scared or hungry or whatever. but they also can cause great distress in the baby if they disappear. And by that, I don't mean disappear as in exit from the child's life. I mean if they go into the next room, or if they leave the house for something, or go to bed, or put the baby to bed, or something. It's difficult. But one of the things that we also know is that if the primary caretakers are not responsive and don't show the baby a lot of attention, that the baby can have a hard time with that, and can become despondent and apathetic. And so we know that it's really important for the baby, and later on children, to have a really secure and warm, caring environment.
And it sounds like that's just from very early on that starts
From the
happening.
start,
So
from the start.
so
Yeah.
in the context of divorce, when we're thinking about one or the other spouse being removed from the house, this could have an impact as soon as a child is born. They really have to be conscious, I guess, of that from the beginning.
Right. And the attachment bonds are so important. It's something that really follows people throughout their lives, and it shifts. You know, as babies turn into toddlers, and toddlers turn into school-age children and college students and adults, there's a shift from the parents to peers, but attachment is really a central force throughout life, and just a very important part in terms of intimate relationships.
If you're just joining us, this is Divorce Periscope, where we talk about a lot of different aspects of divorce the first and third Wednesdays of every month at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We encourage you to ask questions or comments, or give a heart if you like what you're hearing. We've been talking with Dana Goode, who's a therapist, and kind of been setting up what is normal attachment for kids and babies, to then, I think, talk about how does divorce impact that, and what are some ways to sort of message against any kind of trauma that could happen for kids when their parents are going through divorce. So, Dana, why do kids develop separation anxieties in response to their parents' breakup?
Well, I think it's because there is a threat to the security of the attachment bond. And I think that when children find out that their parents are divorcing or are going to divorce, they may respond, they may cry, they may be quiet, there may be many different reactions, but it's pretty safe to say that there may be an underlying fear of abandonment and separation anxiety. Even if a child does not overtly communicate this, parents can be pretty sure, they can safely assume that it is somewhere at play for their children. And what can happen is, frequently at some point, one parent moves out. I mean, maybe everybody's moving. Maybe one parent is moving here, and the other parent and the child or children are moving there, but something major is really going to happen. And many times parents are caught up in all kinds of chaos through the thought of no one. It's not about placing blame. It's just that whether it's a mother and a father, two mothers, two fathers, people's lives are getting sort of turned upside down for a little while. So parents are, feeling sometimes lost, sometimes rejected, hurt, angry, and children could be pretty confused. So it can be helpful if parents can really explain what's going on to children in a way that they can understand.
So you already talked a little bit about this, but do you want to add anything to what normal attachment looks like? Maybe as the kids are old?
I think, well, I guess I talked a little bit about infancy and the months that follow. When children become toddlers, they are more likely to shadow and dart. They'll shadow the primary caretaker, and they'll dart away, and they'll want the parent to run and catch them, and it's a game. But they also, if they are securely attached, they're much more comfortable and confident going out into the world, even if out into the world is, from where we're sitting to the door over there. Or, maybe at some point it becomes leaving the parent at daycare or at preschool, then at elementary school. But children who feel securely attached are able to make those transitions with more comfort and more confidence, and that follows, over time through the different stages, different developmental stages.
So it sounds like the separation anxiety feelings can be pretty painful depending on the situation for the kids.
I mean, I think even if there isn't a major transition going on at home, it's very normal for children to experience some type of separation anxiety. And it doesn't mean that anything's wrong. It doesn't mean that somebody isn't developing well or anything like that. It's just part of growing up. But when there is divorce or when parents are separating, many times the pain that children feel, what's at the root of it is some fear of abandonment or some fear, some separation anxiety. And it's because a parent maybe disappears overnight. And I mean, hopefully parents are able to work things out and it doesn't quite happen that way, but sometimes it does. And then a child awakens in the morning to find out that the parent is gone and hears, we're getting a divorce. And, what does that mean? And what does it mean in terms of when the child will see that parent again? And when will the child see the parent in the future? What does the future hold at all? And I mean, it's where will I be living? Who else is going to move? Is somebody else leaving? And, what does it all mean? So it's a lot to process. And without one important thing, I think, is that without information about what is happening, children will put something together themselves. They'll make up a reason, and not because they plan to, but just because that's the way our minds work. If we don't know something, we try to fill the gap. So. Well, what happened? Well, maybe it's because I didn't put my toys away, or, maybe it's because I didn't stop screaming last night and, mom got really sick of that and said she's out of here, or, daddy seemed upset with me last week and I don't know why, but he probably just doesn't really like me. They will figure out all kinds of things that are usually wrong and usually have to do with some kind of self-blame. Right. Usually. I mean, there can be other reasons too.
We're encouraging people watching to make comments, ask questions around the topic of divorce and children. This is Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation's Divorce Periscope broadcast. You can follow us at Alpha Divorce. So we're with Dana Goode, who's a licensed psychologist, talking about kids and attachment to their parents and how divorce may interrupt that. So maybe we already started to talk about this too, but how might separation anxiety and fear of abandonment come about?
Well, I think it tends to come about when children learn that their parents are divorcing, and if there's not much discussion or if they don't have some kind of understanding and reassurance, they tend to experience some pretty significant distress about it, and they don't really know what's happening. And I mean, one of the things when I'm working with parents who are divorcing, or sometimes this comes up, many times this comes up in mediation when we're looking at the parenting agreement. Sometimes parents have already separated, sometimes they're planning to separate, and one of the things that they'll ask about is, when do we tell the children? What do we tell the children? And one of the things that I say to them is, you can let the children know when it's a firm decision. So, and by that, I mean, so that they're not just deciding, well, we could get divorced or maybe, and usually, I mean, by the time they get to Alpha and by the time they get to me, they have made that decision. But what I suggest to them is to tell the children when they have a firm decision in terms of who is moving and when. And what I recommend, and this is a guideline because, each family is different, and bottom line is it's up to the parents to decide. But one of the things that I recommend is roughly a week, give the children roughly a week's notice when one of the parents is going to move out. And the reason that I say that is so that there is some notice and a child can get used to the idea a little bit, with the emphasis being on a little bit, because all the changes are it's going to take a lot of time to adjust to the changes that are coming about. But if they have a week, then it gives them a little bit of an opportunity to adjust to the idea before the parent is just gone.
Mm-hmm.
And but not too much time, so that if it's, the kids know about it and the weeks pass and then the months pass and it's, well, mom, or, weren't you going to move out, or, what's happening with that, and it can be excruciating if it goes on and on and on and everybody is sort of in limbo. The other thing is that with very young children, maybe giving them a little less time, a little less notice, maybe 3 or 4 days or so. And that's just because developmentally they're at a time when, it's a day can feel like, I don't know, a year or a month or something. I don't know. It's, well, when's my birthday? Oh, your birthday's next month. And,
right.
later the same day, it's like, really, it still is a month away. So, they don't yet have a clear conception of time, the passage of time, and so giving them a little less notice may be better for them developmentally.
So let me just ask a clarifying question there. So you said it's a good idea to let the kids know we're planning on getting divorced and here's the next step, and dad's moving out or mom's moving out, so that they have some sense of what the near future is.
Right.
So does that mean that it's not a good idea to tell them if you don't have the next step planned? Like if you're just kind of like, we're getting divorced, but we're not quite sure. I know stability is good for kids, but I guess there's going to be situations where clients are trying to figure out what the next move is, whether one of them's staying in the house, whether I have to sell it.
Right.
I guess they would just have to figure out the best way to talk to them without knowing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, let's see.
When they do tell the children, one of the things that, when at all possible, one of the things that I recommend is that they tell them together, so that they sit down together and have this conversation. And sometimes it can be a difficult conversation to have, and parents are sometimes emotional, and what I tell them is that's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to let your children know that you feel emotion around this. You don't have to be you don't have to be calm at every moment. But the reason that I recommend it, if possible, and if parents can't do it that way, then they make another plan, and that's fine. But when they can do it together, it well, first of all, if there are children, if it's a single child, then it's a single child. But if there are children, then they're in it together, and they can turn to one another for friendship and support. But it also demonstrates one of the things that at Alpha we certainly communicate again and again and again to the parents, which is, collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. And so, in addition to saying it, if the parents can sit down together, then they communicate to the children, we are in this together, and we are working together for you because we love you, which is also something that when I talk to parents about what they can tell their children about why and about how they're going to reassure their children of their ongoing love for them, that's something, again, that they can say, which is, we're working together, we're going to take care of you till you're all grown up. And so by sitting down together to tell them about the divorce and the upcoming separation, the hope is that it will communicate to the children that, we are working together.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So once the family is not together anymore in the same way, and one of the spouses moves out, one of the parents moves out, what should contact look like after, the first week or two of separation?
I think a lot of contact and a lot of predictability is going to be important, and probably on an ongoing basis. But even before talking about that, I wanted to just focus a little bit on what to tell children.
Mm-hmm.
And what it sort of boils down to is telling them what to expect and telling them, giving them some sort of explanation that they can understand, that's, geared toward their age and developmental stage.
Without blaming.
Without blaming,
right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
which is a very important point because it's natural. I mean, sometimes parents, and they can be really good parents, really solid citizens. It's not to, again, it's not in describing this, it's not to place blame on them because they're going through a really tough time. But it can be easy for parents when they're going through this process to, they know that their children, most children, unless the situation is just unbelievably difficult, most children do not want their parents to separate, do not want their parents to get divorced. So, and parents know this, so that when they're sitting down to tell them, or in the days leading up to or following, sometimes parents are thinking, well, why shouldn't I tell the kids that he had an affair, or that she drained the bank account, or that somebody drinks and does drugs, or, whatever. And it's just really important. Kids identify so much with both of their parents. And even if they are closer to one parent than to another parent, they still identify with both parents. And so faulting one of the parents, blaming that parent, making that parent out to be the bad guy can really hurt the kids. It hurts their developing self-esteem. And it sort of becomes like another burden for them to carry along with them through life. And that's just, that's just really painful for them. So it makes it very hard.
Any other details about the best way that parents should talk to the kids about?
Yeah, I think in addition to sitting down together, if possible, it's important to tell the children what is going to happen and to give them an explanation, and I'll give a little more detail about that. But then also reassure them that the parents' love, both parents, will continue to love them forever, and that is not going to change. So in telling them what to expect, it's sort of a matter of saying, okay, here's what's happening. We're going to get a divorce. We're not going to be living together anymore. And on this day, whatever the day is, this parent is going to be moving, and here's where the parent will be moving to, and you will see the place, and you can go, and you're going to have a place to stay there, and you can put pictures up, and you can, it's going to be your home too. You have two homes, and I mean, frequently you hear about mom's house, or mom's house and dad's house, or mom and mom, dad and dad, but although it's more wordy, I like thinking of it in terms of, you're home with this parent and you're home with that parent, because both of those places are going to be the children's homes too.
Let me just say that we're doing Divorce Periscope tonight, the first and third Wednesdays of every month at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And hello to our viewers. Give us some hearts or comments or questions. We are talking about divorce and children. So we have a great expert here with us tonight, Dana Goode, who's a licensed psychologist and has been working with kids and parents through divorce processes for many years, and has been working with us at Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation for 12 years, right? 2004.
Yeah, I guess so.
So we're just talking about some ways that parents can talk to the kids about the divorce decision, the decision to get divorced, and what are some of the best ways to talk to them about it. Do you have any other things to add?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the explanation that the parents give, because sometimes, because I think it's just something that should be clarified, because when I talk about an explanation, I mean something like, when the two of us got married, we loved each other very much. And when you were born, we loved each other very much, and we had intended to stay together, and we've really worked hard to try to make that happen. But sometimes parents' feelings for one another change, and that is something that has happened to us, and we haven't been happy together, and so we're going to get a divorce. But the parents can also really emphasize that their feelings for the children haven't changed and say to them, that first of all, divorce is a problem between the adults in the home, and that the kind of love that we have for you, our children, it's a different kind of love, and it's a love that is not going to change. It will never go away. We will never leave you, and we are always going to be there for you. And then the third part, which is reassuring children of the ongoing love of the parents for them, is to say, we are going to be with you every step of the way, and we're going to work together to do that. We are together, even though we are not going to be married to each other anymore. We are going to take care of you. We're going to work together to take care of you until you're all grown up. And then the kids are going to be processing this for a while, so that and then they're going to process it again when they're at a different age or a different developmental stage, or something happens in their lives that makes them think about something and think about their own situation. And it's an ongoing process. So it's very likely that later on, whether that's months or years or both, the kids will have more questions. And it's whether or not they do, it's a good idea for parents to reassure their children on an ongoing basis of their love for them and of their intention to work together as co-parents and really be there as a team.
So kids can develop behavioral problems. I know that's one of the outgrowths of, I guess, some of these feelings of fear, anxiety, is acting out at school is oftentimes where it comes out. Besides what you've already said, trying to let children know that it's not about them, that they love the kids, what are some ways to prevent some of those behavioral anxieties and those fears and the behavioral problems that can come out of that from developing?
I think...
or if people see those behavioral problems starting, how do you address that?
I think one thing is, for parents to really spend time with their children so that they're tuned in to what's going on, and they're talking to them about all kinds of things, not just the divorce, but about, what's going on in math class, and, how was your soccer game, and what are you going to try out for the school play, and, if who are the children's friends. And I think another idea, something else that's really important is for the parents to be in contact with the school or the schools, to, maybe have a conversation with people there who can offer support to the child. Some schools have support groups. Some schools, counselors are available to, as needed, check in with children and see how they're doing. Parents can also get their kids involved in therapy, just as a way of having someone who is not part of the family be interacting with the child and, develop an understanding of what's going on and maybe come up with some recommendations, some ideas of what could be helpful.
We're talking with Dana Goode, who's a therapist, about children and divorce. So what's the best way to help kids transition as their parents are going through divorce? And it sounds like it's really an ongoing thing, right? So I was thinking about this. This wasn't in the questions that we discussed before the show, but when you're a family unit when you're co-parenting with your spouse, oftentimes I feel like, talk to mom about that. She's the one that deals with it. And then, talk to dad. So when you go into two households, can you still work as a team like that? Or do you find that parents have to sort of develop a whole new side to them? Like, now I have to talk to my kids about these issues in my home the way mom used to or the way dad used to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And yes, to what you're saying, but it's
probably
also
both.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Parents need to be prepared to have these discussions, or if a parent really is not able to, and maybe there are great reasons for that, the parent can say, I think your other parent may be able to address this better with you. And that's fine. But then the other piece is, which I haven't really mentioned, but that as co-parenting goes along, it is really important for the co-parents to be communicating with each other. And people do that in different ways. I mean, in the olden days before email and texting and those wonderful ways of communicating, it had to be a phone call or face-to-face, which nothing wrong with that. But, parents can come up with their own system. Sometimes they prefer to email because it's easier that way. They don't have to look the other person in the eye or hear the other person's voice. And sometimes as they're adjusting to the whole situation, they find that it's easier for emotional reasons, and it's also just more convenient. So really whatever works is fine. But one of the things that I recommend is that, over the course of a week, they pick out whatever time or day works and just, take a look at certain important issues. Is there anything going on medically? Is there anything going on academically that we need to communicate about? Is there anything social, that we need to discuss about? What about vacation time or this holiday or that holiday? What do we need to look at as co-parents, as a team, and to find some way to communicate that, whether it's emailing or, texting or some other means of communication. So that they're staying, on top of things, because as best they are able to, it makes it easier for the kids. And that is really, that's my focus, and I will say to people when I'm doing mediations or if I'm doing co-parenting work, I will say, I'm here to represent your child or your children. And sometimes they've just met me. When I sit down to do the parenting agreements, they've just met me. They don't know me.
Right.
So I will say to them, it's not that I don't like you or that I don't like you or that I don't think you're good parents. But if I say something or if I question you or if I throw something out there that sounds like I'm not supporting what you're saying, it's because I'm just trying to think of the needs of your child as best I can. So, yeah, important point.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit more about the collaboration between spouses who are divorced in co-parenting? So I think ideally, if they are divorcing, they're using some kind of a mediation program like ours, where part of the program is a parenting therapist that's sitting them down and thinking about what's the best interest of the kids first before we deal with the finances or anything,
Absolutely.
so that the kids can't be used sort of as negotiation tools.
Right.
So hopefully, however you're divorcing, you have the benefit of talking to a therapist about what's in the best interest of the kids. But not everyone has that. If they've, I guess, regardless of whether they started talking about co-parenting during the divorce or they've had a horrible divorce and they're starting afterwards, what are some ways that they can create a co-parenting plan together?
Well, I think a lot of it has to really do with their communication and with their commitment to do their very best to treat each other with respect. And I know sometimes when I say that, I'll watch people either roll their eyes or, sort of, take a deep breath, or I'll see body language, kind of tone up and, and I get that. But I think that to the extent that they can be polite and speak respectfully and honor what they say they're going to do, if they're going to drop the child off, they do it on time. That they not talk negatively about the other parent, whether it's in front of certainly not in front of the child, but also not to others. That they get their families enlisted in a plan of collaboration, because sometimes one of the things that I will see is that, parents seem to be on board in terms of collaborating and working with their co-parent. But then what about their parents and their siblings and cousins and everyone? And, all it takes is for one of those people to roll their eyes or to, sort of sigh or, just make some kind of sound. And children, they tap into that very quickly. So that's important. It's also important for parents to, to not curse, to not push, shove, be rude. One time I was doing a mediation, and this was before I came to Alpha actually, and I was in the room trying to get a parenting agreement, which I did not get, but the people started cursing at each other in another language.
Oh.
And I said to them, I can't understand what you're saying, but
you can tell it's cursing.
Oh, I think it was. I think one of them may have told me that was cursing. But talk to each other, be civil, make good eye contact, manage your anger. Parents can get support, whether it's from friends or whether it's from a therapist, or they need to take care of themselves.
So that's
Eat well, exercise, get sleep.
That's a good point. You don't mean bottle up your emotions. You mean don't show your worst emotions around your kids and find a way to get out. You're gonna. It's okay to have negative emotions.
Absolutely.
You're going through a horrible time in your life.
Absolutely.
But you need to find the healthiest ways to exercise those.
Right.
Right.
Somebody was telling me recently that after a difficult encounter, she was very, very upset, and there was no one around. The phone had been hung up. There was no one around, and she just cried and screamed and got it out. And why not, right? And it works differently. Somebody else wants to go for a run. Somebody else wants to, I don't know, call a friend. Whatever. It's fine. But keep it in check as best as possible. Doesn't mean you can never have emotions in front of your kids,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're going to see what anger looks like. If they haven't, they probably already have, but it's part of life. It's just an emotion,
And you can always go back and use your mistakes as teachable moments for your kids, right?
Definitely.
So you can say, remember when I did that?
Yep.
I shouldn't have said it, and here's why,
Yep.
and we don't talk like that. And
Yep,
right.
Absolutely. And it's a really good point, because the thing about parenting is, and when you have kids, and if they are at home, or if you're parenting them till they're roughly 18, first of all, you're going to make mistakes. But secondly, one of the really great things is that you've got lots of time, and you can make lots of mistakes. I mean, we're talking about guidelines, and nothing is picture perfect. And I can say, do this and don't do that, and sure, except that the reality is it doesn't always go that way. But you still have a lot of time to do a lot of good things and to make teachable moments out of the mistakes. And you can goof a whole lot and still be good parents, and your kids will still love you and know that you goofed. And if you can take responsibility for the mistakes, it really helps.
Yeah, right.
I know this, not just professionally, personally.
Right. And other therapists I've talked to have said that if you're handling divorce in a respectable way with your spouse, that's one of the biggest mistakes of your life, in a way, that you're teaching your kids how to handle a very hard situation and come out of it in a better way, I guess.
Yeah.
You mentioned a parenting agreement, which is one of the things that you'll do in a mediation in our program, is to sit down and meet with clients and talk to them and develop a co-parenting agreement. Can you just explain a little bit about what is in those agreements? Like, what are the types of things that you talk to people about?
Sure.
And it's a written agreement, and
It is. It is a written agreement, and it's actually I know this is something that Alpha has put together years ago, and it has, I believe, grown and changed in certain ways, and I think it's really strong. But when I'm doing an agreement, I sit down with the parents and talk with them about what it is that we're going to do. And I say to them, what I'm hoping is that we can complete a parenting agreement by the time that you're done, and then I will put it all together, or I'll send it on to Alpha, they will send it to you. But what I start with is talking about collaboration and what does that mean? And it means some of the things that we've talked about this evening, but basically that the children have two homes where they know their parents love them and will always be there for them, and that their parents are going to work together and are going to make helpful decisions that take into consideration the child's need to love both parents. Because that's if as adults, if we take that from our children, that can really be harmful for a long, long time. So that's where it starts. And then we talk a little bit about legal custody and about physical custody. And I point out to them, of course, that I'm not an attorney, so I'm not in any kind of position to give legal advice or anything like that. And that although I am a psychologist, that I'm not there as a psychologist, I'm there as a mediator. And then we go through the steps. We take a look at, what are their thoughts about the kind of parenting agreement that they would like to have? Meaning where would they see their children on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis? And I explain to them that regardless of, if they work out some kind of shared arrangement that's more like 50-50, or if it's not 50, if it's a primary agreement and a primary custody
And partial
custody, thank you, that, it doesn't mean that the primary physical custodian is more of a parent simply because that the children are with that parent more hours of the week, and that the other parent is less of a parent. What it really means is that it's this is where the children are. So, which is important because sometimes people really stumble over that, and I think that what they share is that they are worried about losing their children and about being less important. And one of the things I try to encourage them to do is look at it as, whatever you decide about where the child is going to sleep at night, if you look at a week or you look at a 2-week period, can those days be filled with opportunities to see both parents? Not just the parent where the child is staying, but the other parent too, even if it's for, homework a couple times a week, or dinner, or whatever it might be, that they can put that together however they like. And I tell them that I am genuinely excited that they've decided to mediate, because it means that they can make those decisions, and it's not somebody else saying, okay, here's what it's going to be. Oh, you don't like it? Oh well,
right. People can
hard.
Be really creative, right?
Yes, they can be creative. They can think outside the box, and it's theirs. It's their process.
So we're almost, I think, at the end of our broadcast here tonight. This is Divorce Periscope. We've been talking with Dana Goode about divorce and children, and we've had a lot of really valuable nuggets of information from you, so thank you. If anyone has any questions or comments that's watching, or want to throw us some hearts, feel free to do so, and follow us at Alpha Divorce. Do you want to have any last comments as we're wrapping up here? I know you have some information there about easing transitions. Is that as people are moving from home to home?
As they are moving back and forth.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's an important time, and it's a time of adjustment, and it's a lot of hellos and goodbyes, because kids are going back and forth, and it becomes, yes, they do adjust to it, and it becomes part of just what they do. Like they go to school every day, and they go back and forth between their parents at different times during the week, or whether it's a weekly schedule or a bi-weekly schedule, whatever. But it is a number of hellos and goodbyes. It's always hello to one person and goodbye to another. And I think maybe just some general ideas are that it can be helpful, especially when kids are younger, but also when they're older. But just to talk with them about what they're going to do when they go to the other parent's home, and the one parent can check in with the other parent, what do you have in mind? And, the other parent might say, well, why are you asking that? So the first parent can say, well, it's because I think that this could be helpful for our child so that he or she knows to prepare. So that the child feels, some sort of control over the situation. And which isn't to say, I know that nobody really has control in life. We like to, we think we do, we want to try to get it, but we really don't. But, this is probably not the time to give the child the experience of, oh, well, there's no control here. So, because the feelings are so intense and the stakes are too high. This is really important stuff. But so that's one thing. And then there could also be some kind of routine that's established, maybe the parent, hangs out with the child before the child leaves and they read a book or they talk about their day or what they're going to do when the child comes back, or, something that is, fairly regular, fairly consistent. And then, also, if it's, again, this is probably more for a younger child, but, maybe pack some kind of care bag, that whatever that might involve, whether it's a stuffed animal or a blanket or a special book, or maybe a note from the parent who is saying goodbye to the child, and, just to sort of help ease the transition and the goodbye. In terms of the actual transition, if you're taking your child somewhere, or if you are the parent picking the child up, be on time. And then, of course, be courteous, really just, either say very little or, it's definitely not a time to start a discussion about anything substantive, but just to be courteous and say hello, goodbye, whatever, and the child makes the transition. When the child returns, sometimes kids react, of course, in different ways, but the child might need some time to readjust to the home that they've left and now return to, and sometimes not. Sometimes they just want to be back with that parent and they'll throw their arms around the parent. Other times they might need some quiet time. And so I think it can be helpful if parents are just aware of this and that they don't take whatever it is too personally if a child doesn't seem overjoyed to be back, but they understand that the child is just readjusting and that it's okay, and to not pepper the child with questions, well, what did you do? Well, what did the other parents say? Well, how much money do you have left? Or, just, there are all kinds of things to not do, but to just try to be as relaxed as possible, and, let the child know you're glad that he or she is back, and give them a chance to settle in.
Here's something I just thought of, rules for the kids. They don't necessarily have to be the same rules in each home, right? But I do know that it's best if parents can communicate. If someone's gotten in trouble and it's a legitimate reason and there's a punishment going on in one household, that hopefully the other parent can be supportive to the parent about the punishment or the behavior, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we talk about that when we're doing the agreements too.
Yeah.
And it's, aside from punishments, just rules in general. It's sometimes a little challenging and sometimes not. Sometimes parents are really on board with that and they'll say, no TV unless homework is done and bedtime around this hour or whatever. But other times it's hard. And, if you look at parents who are married to each other and in a happy relationship, they still may have very different ideas about, how late can your, 15-year-old stay out, and is it really necessary to read ahead in this class, or people have all different kinds of ideas. So, but yes, we encourage to the best of parents' ability, if they can be on board, certainly to communicate, and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of communicating, sort of the major areas, whether it's academic or medical or whatever. But certainly, if there's something that has come up in school or somewhere else that or at home that involves some kind of behavioral issue that has led to a consequence.
Mm-hmm.
The communication of that from one parent to the other is really important, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully the parent will support the other parent
Mm-hmm.
following through,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully, or at least discuss it so that there can be some clear communication with the child.
Yeah. Great. Well, we want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch Divorce Periscope tonight. We've been talking with Dana Goode, who's a licensed psychologist, and she works with couples going through divorce and families and kids, and we've been talking about the impact on children and their development, and some ideas for people going through divorce to try and help them so that it doesn't impact or harm their kids. So thank you, Dana, for being here.
Thank you.
We'll have you back again some other time. And the next Divorce Periscope is going to be May 18th in 2 weeks. So tune in that Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And we hope to see you then. And the first and third Wednesday of every month, we do Divorce Periscope, talking about different issues related to divorce. So I'm Matt Pillisher, and good night, everyone.